Hi guys, welcome to Paradox of Losing Cycle channel. This video is about a case study, of $80,000 ruin in 30 minutes, and it's based on a real live game. So I've been watching a channel. It's on YouTube. I'm not going to mention who he is and what's the other channel name is for the confidentiality reasons. But what I'm doing is basically taking my review on the game. I've been watching that game for about 30 days, more or less, about a month. So the other person, his objective was that he brought in $15,000 to the table, and his aim was to generate $100,000 within a 1 year time span. So that's his objective. And his initial um, approach was that he's going to take it easy. He's going to basically, his daily target is around $300. That's about it. And he had a system in place for roulette. Um, it's a roulette system, and he used an online gambling site in order to put this into a test. And he used crypto in order to transfer the funds into the online gambling site. And he started with $15,000, and his aim was to make $100,000 over 1 year time span. So I was interested to watch his performance because in our channel in Paradox of Losing Cycle, we had a model called the losing cycle and the marginal propensity of loss, or margin propensity of loss. So I'm gonna put that model and walk you through according to the performance of this gentleman, and see if our model of losing cycle uh, is working well, and it works according to our statistics and our math. And our math says that ultimately he's going to go into a ruin, which he did. And he did not reach $100,000 in 1 year, but he managed to reach $80,000 in a month period, and he lost it all. So that's quite sad. It's uh, it's heartbreaking, but so let's analyze what happened. So we will use our tools, our math, and our models in order to analyze his performance and see what happened. Okay, so let's get started. All right. So the game was he played roulette and dice. Mainly, he started roulette for about 2 weeks, and then he shifted to dice after 2 weeks, and then and the whole game lasted about 30 days. And this is based on a real live game. So we're gonna display our losing cycle model, and then we're gonna walk you through his game on on our chart, and then we will analyze exactly what happened. So as our model depicts, basically our model is constructed based on uh, a chart, x-axis and y-axis. The x-axis is the time, and the y-axis is the volatility. Okay, and then there is a slope called the MPL, which is the marginal propensity to lose. So what this chart says that that gambling is a losing cycle, and it's not a winning cycle. So here we got the arrow. So I'm gonna describe this here. So basically, it's a losing cycle. So the slope is sloping downward. Okay, and there will be ups and downs, which is the wins and losses over time. Okay, and then until there's a spike, and there will be a shift in the MPL curve in case if the spike results in a win. Otherwise, it's going to be a ruin to zero line. Okay, so that's the gambling curve. So it's a losing cycle. So let's put his game on this chart. So he started with $15,000, about a month ago, and he started playing roulette. So the result from the game was basically he was playing very conservative in the beginning, as we said, in our videos. Like usually when the game starts, it's a highly controlled and very conservative, and you have this fear of losing, and your self-image and your ego is very well balanced in the beginning, and then at the later, things gets a bit haywire. But and again, so in the beginning he was um, uh, very conservative. He was very cautious, and as I predicted, that I mean things could go wrong later on. When the volatility starts. But in the beginning, he was very conservative. He was he had a plan, and his plans were working perfectly fine. And so he was, as a result of his cautious bets, his wins and losses were also minimal. So that MPL curve, the slope was sloping downward, not too sharply, but in a balanced way. So basically, he had ups and downs. So he had relatively speaking, between wins and losses, he had bigger losses than the wins. But that's what our statistics of negative EV says. And also the bell curve says that usually the losses are bigger than the wins. But it depends on your betting ratios. You can manage this through betting small and then occasionally betting high in order to capitalize on the win. So and that's what he did. So basically, the ups and downs, the wave basically looked like this. So you had $300 up, $1,000 down, and then he went back to $400 up, down to $2,000, and he was up by $500. Okay, so all of this time, he could have stopped. I mean, basically, he did stop actually. So at some point when he was up for $400, he took a pause. He took a break, and then he came back later, and then he continued on this curve until he had like he had about maybe this curve lasted about maybe 2 or 3 sessions in the beginning when he had initially injected $15,000. So this ups and downs, he managed to take pauses, take a break in between, and he capitalized on the profit resulting on the above the zero line. And then we discussed it in the EV curve that uh, you know the the surplus, it goes above the zero line briefly and then it goes back down, and it's a cycle. It's up and down. Okay, it goes above the zero line and then it comes down, above the zero line and it comes down. So initially he managed to take pauses on these positive figures whenever he was sitting at profit above the zero line. So that helped him to continue on this line. And then, but at the same time, he was facing bigger losses, but he managed to bounce back up. So whenever he goes, like, let's say, minus 1,000, he had enough bankroll in order to sustain this minus $1,000. And then it went back up to 400. It took a break here, and then it came back, and then played again. And then while he was playing again, it went back down sometimes to negative $2,000. Still, it's okay because he had a bankroll of $15,000. So he could sustain that $2,000. And then when he was up again above this zero line by $500, he took a break and came back down. So, and then again, this ups and down continued. And whenever he was up this zero line, he took a break and came back, and then played again. Whenever he played, just keep a note of this, that he always had a big losses, and he, relatively speaking, okay, so he had like relative to the profit, he never had a huge profit. Mostly he had bigger loss but small profit, but he took a break in between. So that helped him to continue gambling. At the end of this MPL1, he had a spike. That spike was on his favor. I mean, any spike can be either down or up. Okay, that's according to our mathematical model. So in his case, he was running on a winning streak. So basically, this spike here resulted in shifting the MPL curve upward. And then there you go. So basically now he got his MPL curve shifted upward. That's MPL2, and his bankroll increased by $17,000. All right. So that's like in the span of maybe probably a week and a half, maybe. All right. So I'm talking here really an approximate figure. This is not exact, figure as it is, but more or less is accurate. But these figures are approximation. So basically, his bankroll went up by $17,000, and then his MPL curve got shifted. In this case, as we said in our mathematical model, whenever the MPL curve gets shifted, usually the gambler, they don't go back to the same risk measure. Their betting size usually increases, relatively speaking. So his bet size started becoming relatively higher than the MPL1 curve. So he started becoming 4,000. His losses also was bigger. It was, like on average $3,000, and then he had a profit of $800, and then a loss of $3,000, and then a profit of $900, and then 3,500 until he had another spike. Since he was on a winning streak, the MPL2 curve got shifted to MPL3. Okay, and then his bankroll went up to 35,000. Very impressive. Very impressive. I mean, he took his bankroll to $35,000 due to these big spikes. All right. So take a note of this. Whenever he was up, he used to take breaks. Like whenever, like in this case, $300, $400, $500. And here basically he had a $400 and then $800 win. Then he took a pause, and then he had $900. But note that even despite that he took break in terms of whenever he was above this $0 line, it's interesting to notice that he didn't go up there easily. He had a drawdown or a downturn, a big drawdown. Like sometimes he goes down to $3,000 and then up by $400, and then he goes down to $3,500 and up by $900. And then he took occasional break whenever he was sitting on these small profits above the $0 line. So that made him announce victory. So whenever he sees this number above the $0 line, he basically said that he achieved his objective for that day, and that was a sign of victory. So in our model, this is not a sign of victory. This is a normal wave of the MPL curve. Okay, so it's a losing cycle, and this is just an up. These are only ups and downs on the EV curve. So this is like a negative EV curve, which is marginal propensity to lose. So all the negative EV curves are based on marginal propensity to lose, meaning that on a cumulative effect, due to this big losses and small wins, if you really calculate what's going on, it's a negative EV. Okay, it doesn't matter if you stopped here at $900, for instance, and took a break. It doesn't mean that you are a winner. Okay, you are a winner if you stop here and never return to the gambling table. But if you're continuing gambling, then you're not a winner, because we don't know what the next outcome is. That's the whole point. So okay, so basically, there was a spike, and then again, the curve shifted upward, and his bankroll increased to $35,000. So now, as per our model, it says that the gambler will increase the betting size, relatively speaking, at this level, and which he did, and his bet sizes became $1,000, then down $3,000, and he was up by $2,000, and down by $5,000, and then up by $5,000, then down by $10,000, and then up by $3,000, and then he was down by $15,000. It was very impressive. I mean, it's just the whole psychology of gambler It's the same, okay? And this model, this mathematical model, is so accurate. I mean, it's just so accurate, and applying this mathematical model on any gambling session, it works perfectly fine. And then he had a spike here, S3, and then which took him to another level up to MPL4. Impressive. And then he took his bankroll from $35,000 to $55,000. That was like in a span of 3.5 weeks. Wow, impressive. Okay, so I mean, anyway, I mean, there are like he has subscribers of like maybe over 5,000 subscribers, and there were thousands of viewers and thousands of comments, and they were all like very impressed about his performance, and I was impressed too. I was like, well, I mean, is this going to continue? I mean, I don't know, at what level of MPL curve the whole game is going to stop. Okay. So I was also very keen, on his performance to see, how it's going to work out. So again, as per our model, he started increasing his bet sizes now. Now the wins are around $2,000 and the losses are around on average $10,000, up by 5,500, down by $15,000, up by 7,000, down by whatever big amount, and then he had another big spike. Guess what? It took him to the S&P 5 curve. Took him to $60,000. Again, its bet sizes, according to our model, is going to increase. He did increase his bet size. It's now 4,500, negative 10, plus 3.5 thousand, negative 20,000, positive 3, negative 30,000. Again, he had a spike. Impressively, he took by the end of the month, he took his bankroll to $80,000. Guys, can you imagine? Very impressive. Okay. But look, so far he is performing according to our mathematical model. He increased his bet size whenever the MPL curve shifted due to the spike. Whenever there was a shift in the MPL curve to the upside, his bet size is increased. So look at this wave. So this is a wave, up and down, spike, shift in the curve, up and down. It's a wave, up and down, up and down, up and down, spike, shift in the curve, and then up and down. So basically, these are waves, up and down, of profit and losses. So eventually, okay, and whenever this curves are shifting upward, he's escalating his bet sizes. He is not going anymore to to his cautious behavior, to his conservative approach that the way he started. Okay, so whenever his bankroll is increasing, his bet size is also increasing, but he is still going over this downward losing cycle. So it doesn't matter if you are, winning here and taking a pause, for instance, and then coming back, because since you're coming back again, so you're going to face this $20,000 and up again 3,000, down again 30,000, and up again. So as long as you are continuing gambling, these numbers, is just there. I mean, these are just these are statistical numbers. I mean, these are just ups and downs. You are just under emotional roller coaster. You are facing the ups and downs of the game. So anyhow, so basically he had a spike, and then the MPL curve shifted to from MPL 5 to MPL 6, and then his bankroll went up to $80,000. So and again, he started betting, and he's betting very high at that level, and profit and losses also was wild. I mean, he was up, he was up by one session by $8,000, down by $20,000, then $3,000 down by $15,000. It was wild, and then he went up to $4,000, and ultimately he had a spike at 6. Unfortunately, bankrupted. All right, that was the end of it. Yeah, I mean that was. I mean, well, we can always say that he should have stopped here or he should have stopped here. I mean, but the problem is with the gambler's mentality, right? So whenever you are playing with the house money, the house money, feels unreal. It feels like it's free money. So you tend to take much higher risk as the this MPL curve gets shifted due to the spike in your bankrolls, and you are tempted to bet higher and higher and higher, and you become desensitized for towards the gains and losses. I mean, even though he was up down here by $15,000, for instance, on the MPL6, and then up again $4,000, that was a clear and red flag, and he should have stopped there. I mean, this $4,000 means that he could have kept $64,000 and stopped the game, but he pushed it really hard and he started playing dice and with roulette and all of this. He was really kind of wild, and he was clicking so fast and with speed and with a lot of emotions, and his emotion roller coaster. But basically, he stopped functioning well. I mean, basically, he started going wild. He was on steroids, and started like doubling bets, and he didn't even realize that he was doubling. His one bet reached up to sometimes $30,000, like almost like half of this bankroll. And then two bets on $30,000. Obviously, it took him to the ruin. So that's the losing cycle, guys. So this is where um, everyone should pay attention to this losing cycle chart and how the gambling session works out and what's going on with the gambling session. I mean, even when I used to gamble, I realized that these ups and downs are really kind of temporary, because it doesn't matter where you're gonna stop. But it's gonna give you a full sense of achievement whenever you stop and take a break, and then whenever you come back, you are riding the cycle again until you have some sort of spike based on luck, and that spike can give you a boost in confidence by increasing your bankroll, and then it reaches to a height. I mean, let me tell you, one time in Hong Kong, in Macau, basically, I managed to take $50,000 bankroll to $1 million and lost half of it. So I managed to keep half of it. Okay, so $500,000, and again, so it's really based on your psychological status. If you really have to realize what's going on mathematically here whenever you are gambling, and whenever you are realizing ups and downs based on the several shifts in the curve, based on several shift in the curves. I mean, based on the spikes. So, and again, there are different. It's different, from this small ups and downs based on the EV. I call it, these are the EV ups and downs, but there are, the big spikes that they come in. It can shift the EV curve upward. So, this MPL curves are, or sometimes it's also called the EV curve. So let's describe this from another perspective based on the EV curve itself, or the bell curve, and then we can talk about the EV curve. So as we discussed, if you translate that losing cycle curve into a bell curve, this is how it looks like. So basically, this gentleman had all kinds of uh, gains and losses, and the bell curve looked like this. Okay, on this bell curve, basically, he had the higher concentration of losses and less concentration of gains. And over time, or let's say over the period of 30 days, he had one big loss here, okay, that concluded his bell curve. Okay, so this is the bell curve of gambling. So um, this is a classical statistical model of probability-based outcomes. Okay, and here we have described this situation. In his case, the initial engagement and early wins. Basically, the gambler begins with initial engagement in gambling activities, often experiencing early wins or small gains. So the psychological factor that goes here at the early stage is that feelings of excitement, optimism, and positive reinforcement as the brain's reward system is activated by the anticipation of potential reward. Then he goes into a period of moderate success. So as the gambler continues to play, there is a period of moderate success characterized by occasional wins and losses, with losses slightly outweighing gains in smaller increments. And the psychological factor that basically he goes under is a continued optimism and motivation fueled by intermittent reinforcement, as occasional wins reinforce the belief in one's gambling skills or luck. Then he goes into a peak of success and overconfidence, where the gambler reaches a peak of success, experiencing larger wins and feeling a sense of overconfidence in their gambling abilities. In this case, basically, the psychological factor states that heightened feelings of euphoria, invincibility, and overestimation of one's skills or luck, leading to riskier behavior and increased betting. Then he goes into transition to losses and decline. Eventually, following the peak of success, and gambler begins the experience from frequent and larger losses, leading to a decline in overall gains. The psychological factors here is that he goes under frustration, denial, and cognitive biases such as the gambler's fallacy or the illusion of control, which perpetuate the gambling behavior despite mounting losses. And he goes into denial that he can still make it happen, so he's going to push it harder. And then he goes under desperation and chasing the losses by depositing more money, and that's exactly what he did. By the way, he went out and he brought in $9,000. So basically, I even warned him that he's chasing losses in this case. He should be taking a break and not depositing more money, but he didn't listen. He did deposit more money, which is about $9,000. So as losses accumulate, the gambler may enter a phase of desperation, chasing losses by increasing bets and engaging in riskier forms of gambling. So the psychological factor here is anxiety, desperation, and cognitive distortions such as selective memory or irrational beliefs in luck or superstition, which can drive compulsive gambling behavior and increase the financial losses. Then eventually, it's going to go under crisis point where potentially it can go to complete ruin. The gambler reaches a crisis point where losses far outweighs the gains, leading to financial ruin, emotional distress, and potentially irreversible consequences. And the psychological factor at that point is depression, hopelessness, and self destructive thoughts or behavior as the gambler faces the harsh reality of their addiction and its devastating impact on their life and well being. I hope that he realizes that and it doesn't really go into that situation. So describing this in terms of negative EV, we say that any gambling session, which are the smaller waves, is always that initially there is a small loss and then the profit goes above this zero line and then it comes back down again. So it's a cycle. It's like negative and then above the zero line and then positive. In his case, when he was gambling, whenever his profit went above this zero line, he managed to take a break and then play again. So whenever he came back, he was starting a new session where there was a negative and then slightly above positive line, and before it crashes, he took a break. So this helped him to build his bankroll. So whenever, actually, it's a good trick, but again, I mean, I don't know if many can practice this quite well. So whenever your profit is above the zero line, do not continue because the statistically and mathematically says that whenever your bankroll or your profit goes above the zero line by through gambling, the next thing you have to expect that there is a losing streak coming. Okay, that's the according to the rule of the negative EV. So, but initially, this gentleman, when he was playing perfectly fine. Whenever the EV or whenever his profit or cash flow or his bankroll went above the zero line, he stopped the game. He took a break before the losing streak happened, and he did that for about 3 weeks. But later on, he pushed it really hard. Whenever on day 30, actually, when he lost the $80,000, he was up by. I mean, he was up. He was above the zero line by $6,000. He was up and above the zero line by $6,000, and he didn't stop. He continued playing without stop. And at that day, he actually had 3 sessions back to back, which led him to complete ruin. Okay, guys, that was a case study based on a real life scenario, and that was a based on my review of a game that took place in an online casino. And I hope that this is it conveys a very important lesson, and uh, and this is a illustration for our tools and our mathematical and statistical models of how to what to expect from gambling sessions and how you could potentially manage your gambling sessions. And these tools provide invaluable resources for you guys to use. And hopefully, this material comes really, really handy to you guys. And I hope that you enjoyed this video as well. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in our next videos. Cheers.